I'm Paul Cowling with Film Independent, and welcome to the 2024 Directors Close-Up. Before we start, I'd like to take a moment to thank the partners who make Film Independent's important work possible. Thank you to this year's incredible supporters of the DCU, the Directors Guild of America, SAG Indie, and IMDb Pro. I also want to thank our 2024 Film Independent Spirit Awards supporters, principal partners IMDb Pro and Lavazza Coffee, and official partners Bullet Frontier Whiskey, Fiji Water, Petite Fleur Champagne, and Stella Artois. So we so appreciate your support and devotion to the independent film community. Today, it's documentaries. We have a session coming up later this afternoon or this evening, depending on when you're tuning in from, on the best new non-scripted series. But right now, it's about the best documentary feature nominees. And today, we're joined by the studios alphabetically. Firstly, the co-directors of Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni project, Joe Brewster and Michelle Stevenson are here. Where are you? Hey, Joe, and hey, Michelle. How you doing?
Good afternoon from Brooklyn.
Yes, hello.
Happy You're both in Brooklyn, right? Under the same roof.
Yes, we are.
Right? Different
same house, not the same room.
Yeah, different rooms, same roof, right? Welcome. Congrats on your nomination. Next up is Kautha Ben-Hanya, the director of Four Daughters. Kautha, where are you?
I'm here. Hello. Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine. Hello from Paris.
From Paris?
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Kautha is also a nominee for Best Documentary in the Oscars this year. So congratulations on your double nominations. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next up is the director of The Mother of All Lies, Esme El-Mudia. Esme?
Hello. Hi.
Hello, welcome. Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Paris.
In Paris too. Different roof, right? That's 2 for Brooklyn, 2 for Paris so far.
Yeah. I think there's another one from Paris, I guess.
Okay. Next up, the director of Kokomo City, Dee Smith, is with us. Hi, Dee.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
For joining us. You are whereabouts?
I'm in Miami, Florida.
Miami. Very nice.
Yeah.
Hope it's sunny and warm there.
Yeah, it is hot outside.
Thank you for joining us. And finally, the director of Bye Bye to Tiberius, Lena Suleiman.
Hello. Yeah, Swellen.
Yeah,
I think Paris is winning because I'm also in Paris.
Wow. The first, I think, 3 from Paris. Okay, welcome everyone. Congratulations on all your nominations for the Spirit Awards. It's so very pleased that you can join us all together today. And finally, our moderator, he's the indie producer of films such as Stay Awake and The Sweet Requiem. Shrihari Satay is here. Hey, Shrihari.
Hi, Paul.
How have you been?
Hi, everyone. Good.
Where are you, in Brooklyn?
I am in Brooklyn, so 3 for 3.
There you go. It's a draw. So
nice to see all of you.
Thank you so much for joining us and agreeing to moderate. We'll take some questions a little later on. So if you're tuning in and want to ask questions, make sure to use the Q&A button at the bottom. We'll get to those a little later on. We've also left the chat open for you to just chat with each other. And if you want to drop in your information, your Insta handle, whatever, your other socials, you can do that in the chat. But put questions in the Q&A. But for now, take it away, Shrihari. I'll tune in from behind the scenes.
All right. Thanks, Paul. First, I want to thank everyone at Film Independent for putting together this panel, as well as for hosting a very exciting and truly independent awards show. And I want to congratulate all of you for sharing your craft and your art and your really beautiful and thought-provoking films with the audience. So I welcome you all. I want to start off with a kind of a broad question. Ideally, I would like all of you to kind of answer it. Is what sort of compelled you to make your individual films, and how did you happen upon the film itself, the story of the film? So whoever wants to start, that would be great.
Well, for me, when I conceived the idea to do Kokomo City, I was living in New York City. And there were, I don't know, like around between 2018 and 2017 and 18, 19, it was a lot of tremendous amount of queer content. And the influx of like transgender presence. But to me, like, I don't know, the message, the language talking directly to the Black community, to me was not there. It was either watered down or kind of tiptoed around. And I just think culturally, I wanted to kind of head more in that direction and speak more and represent more the culture through trans women, rather than a lot of those strong talking points that we're kind of serviced through our teams. So that was my approach, and yeah, I enjoyed the process.
Thank you, Dee. While I wait for someone else to speak up, I'm going to just ask you a follow-up question is, how did you kind of go about honing in on the story of the film itself? Like what was the process like for that?
Well, it was very organic. It was natural. Like, I think the main thing I saw in my head was Black and white, and also grittiness of true transgender experience. And so it took me a short time, but it took me some time to kind of like do some research as far as what girls I wanted to reach out to and cast, you know, everything kind of just like was really natural. I did set questions aside to ask everyone. And of course, after one question, the conversation was lasting for hours. And so it was really was the best way for me to document people in their natural kind of state, and when they're kind of, the guard is down and they're comfortable. And obviously when we pass that threshold of, do they trust me? You know, and once we got that, it just really became natural.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to chime in?
Yes, maybe me.
Yeah.
So I have like a movie per day, a movie project per day. I'm very inspired by reality, by what I see in the news, newspapers. But with the four daughters, it was the same process, you know. It was this idea. I heard the mother talking on radio, and I was like, ah, there is a movie here. And then in general, days after, if this first desire doesn't vanish, so I think I knew, or I know, that there is a movie to be done there. So I contacted the mother and I started. It was so many years ago in 2016. And then I was lost on the road searching for the form. It was a long process because I started by thinking about a more conventional documentary, something like a verite cinema, filming this mother and her two daughters, but it was a very bad idea. I wasn't happy with what I filmed, and I thought that it's not the right way to translate this multi-layered complex story. And I was even questioning my abilities as a filmmaker to tell stories, because this story was fascinating, yet I wasn't able to find the right way to tell it. So I put it aside and I did another movie, The Man Who Sold His Skin, my previous movie, which was a fiction. And then I came back and I rethought all the form and the way to tell this story. So, I mean, yeah, when I have an idea and I'm sure that it will be translated in a movie, it can be a very, very long journey.
Thank you, Kauthar. I do have a follow-up question to that as well. So you work in fiction and nonfiction, and how do you see either discipline influencing your work in the other form? Because with Four Daughters, there is a line that you're straddling between performance and nonfiction. So if you can kind of talk a little bit about that, I think that'd be great.
Yes, I remember many years ago when I started doing movies, I did the short movie. It was a fiction, 35 millimeter. And I said, it's not for me doing movies. I'm not a director because it's so complicated. And then I did a documentary, and I understood at the time that the right way maybe for me to have courage to do fiction is to experiment things in documentary, because documentary is such free form where you don't have the pressure of the budget, the pressure of the schedule. And then it depends on stories, you know, there are stories that can be told in documentary with the real character. Other stories, they need to be to have a fictionalized aspect to them. But what I know that what I learned in documentary helped me a lot to do fiction. And without the documentary school, I don't think I could be able to tell stories.
Okay.
So you asked the question, how did we decide to make this?
What compelled you to make the film, and how did you craft the story, the narrative itself?
So I think we kind of reverse engineered this, where we were thinking what we didn't want to do. We had just finished American Promise, which is a 13-year observational piece. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to change the form. We wanted to change the form. Maybe that's too ambitious. We wanted to reconsider what the documentary form. And so we wanted to, we decided there were pillars. We wanted to use editing as part of the storytelling. We wanted to use archival performance, and we looked for a musician to tell that story. We thought we were going to do I'm Not Your Negro meets Kurt Cobain montage of heck. Unfortunately, musicians are hard to find and to pay for the music. Dee would know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And so we were listening to the radio. We heard Nikki Giovanni, and and she checked all the box, everything that we covet in terms of storytelling, unapologetic, sometimes grumpy. She's an amazing stand-up comedian, and she tells a history of Black America that we don't know, or from a vantage point that we don't know. I think there's a feminist lens that my partner saw, and I think that was important as well.
You're on mute.
I think a bit to what Dee was speaking to, us wanting to center a story around someone who really hasn't gotten her due on a much larger scale. And when we think about our Black diasporic communities, how can we center that and honor that in a way that maybe hasn't been seen before? So the compelling nature was not just her unapologetic way of being, which was sort of inspiring for us, the poetry that is unapologetic in giving us back our stories, but also giving a reflection to the larger nation on what certain movements have meant and certain acts of violence. But also in terms of the narrative, how that was compelling for us. And we had to work with a form that would be equally as compelling as her poetry, right? We had to meet that. Couldn't do this chronology, right? Of this is what happened here, this is what happened there, and that's what happened there. It was really about bursting that open, putting it on its head, and figuring out how can we play with the visuals in a way that itself is a poem, but is also honoring her form and her message as well, which is about loving ourselves, understanding the pain, but not dwelling in it, not dwelling in the pain as motivation, and figuring out how we can put moments of joy in there also that really embraces what it means to be human, not just Black, right? And so I feel that that was what we were working with over the 7 years. How can we honor this so it makes sense? So it makes sense and it's on par with her work.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I want to follow up with you as well. So you both of you have a pretty large body of work, and in terms of working, like the earlier project you mentioned, American Promise, was 10 plus years. This is 7+ years. How do you stay self-motivated across multiple projects and to help you drive the story and in terms to realize your vision? What's the magic sauce?
Okay, there is no magic sauce. But what I can say is this, you know, we come to this from a political background. We discovered film. We love all aspects of film. We do virtual reality. We were nominated for a Spirit Award in 1997. And so we've been around a while. We want to learn as much as possible. And what we do is center family and the community that we have. And I hope some of these filmmakers, most of them, we're a part of their community as well, has become extremely important. So we live film. So we can take 7 years because we're constantly learning from the community. We're sharing. Our kids are making film as well. We have a process with characters. We probably never leave them, which is unfortunate sometimes because the phone rings often.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I would add to that is this idea of, again, I think Joe said it, we entered this not to make money. We entered this out of this desire, out of expression. It's not an outside validation. I feel like the storytelling process for us is really about healing, you know? How do we, this tool of healing is also about pushing the form, right? But so that when we're at the end of it, there's something that's come out for us that is healing, and that is at the center of why we do what we do. And the healing is individual, it's collective. There's a lot of arguing in the process, but it's about sort of finding that truth. And I think every film has contributed that in some way. And I think if you see Going to Mars, they're all elements of what we've done in the past is sort of expressed in this. So it's really about this journey of learning, and then from that learning, healing, and hopefully building something new.
Thank you, Joe and Michelle. I guess I'm going to go to Lena.
Yeah. I really wanted to continue because it's really inspiring what you've been saying, and a lot of things that you've been talking about rang a bell with my own process with Bye Bye Tiberius, in which I also wanted to give back complexity, joy, and humanity to 4 generations of Palestinian women of my family. So the film started. It's actually a continuation of my first film. I've directed a first documentary called Their Algeria, in which I filmed my Algerian paternal grandparents and their story of immigration from Algeria to France. And the second film, I tackle my maternal family. So for now, my experience in films is really related to my family. So we'll see how I will continue from there. But both stories have this in common, that I really film the intimate in order to tell the collective. I always see intimacy and collectiveness imbricated, because in the case of my paternal Algerian family or my maternal Palestinian family, the political context has impacted the most intimate relationships and the way in which transmission through generations has functioned or not. And so in Bye Bye Tiberius, I really try to highlight the way that the women of my family in Palestine have been able to maintain their history and their legacy alive, to transmit it through the generations that came after them, despite dispossession, war, and displacement. And the film is really based on my mother, who is the guide who opens the door to all the other women characters in the film, because she's born in a family of 10 with 7 sisters. And so there's a very important presence of women. And I always felt like the women were the guards of the temple of our memory. And so through my mother, I explore the paths of all the other women, questioning what my grandmother or great-grandmother have transmitted to her, what she transmitted to me. And my mother actually left her Palestinian native village when she was 20 to become an actress. So I also question her departure and what she carried with her from her small village all the way to Paris, where I was born.
Thank you, Lena. I mean, that kind of drives me to connect it to Asma, your film as well. So maybe I'll have Asma have you answer first, the first question, and then I have a follow-up question that will tie both of your films together.
Yeah. For me, The Mother of All Lies was like a question that I asked in the family, how we can invent stories when we don't have any concrete or visual proofs of what has happened. The process of The Mother of All Lies is like a part of the film also, because I started asking the question why we have no pictures in the family, just familial and intimate pictures. So I start to ask this question to have fun. Why pictures was forbidden in the family? Why the memory was erased for one reason or another reason? So I wanted just to ask this question in 2012. And in 2016, while I was watching the TV, the news, I discovered that a big riot took place in Dash Street. And I start to ask the same question. Where is the memory? About what happened in the street, about what happened in Casablanca? And then I understood that my little family stories were only symptom of other bigger ones. And that little lies in the family grow bigger, exploded, and escape our house. And then I discovered that there is a mother of all lies in that street, and not only this white lie about pictures, about why we don't have pictures. So the idea, because the subject was sensitive, was like not looking for guilty people or denouncing anyone, but just trying to create an interaction with my family and to show this small mechanism of lies that grew up in the family and after grow up in the society, of course. So yeah, so for me, The Mother of All Lies was a way come to me. I didn't look for this idea. Sometimes ideas come to us. So and the process, how I can bring all my family out of Casablanca, because my grandmother thinks that walls have ears, so she cannot talk freely about what happened. So I tried to create a space with my father out of Casablanca and to bring them to talk freely about the past, and then destroy everything. I'm talking about the miniature and all that set that we created from Casablanca to Marrakesh. And then, yeah, maybe it's gonna be the therapy. I don't like to talk about therapy in cinema, because in cinema we don't cure anyone, we provoke things. But it has, I mean, it was like something happened with me and my family, and change is here today after months from Cannes to now. So I can feel that there is something fixed in the memory, and we can at least talk freely about the past.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of my follow-up question that I would like both Asma and Lena to primarily answer is, how, because both of your films deal with family and have family members as principal subjects, how do you navigate being a daughter or a sister or a granddaughter with being a director in the moments when you are present as yourself, as a family member, but also present as a filmmaker, navigating and documenting the relationships and the story? And what were kind of some of the challenges that each of you faced in navigating those relationships while you were shooting itself, the film? So maybe Asma, we'll start with you and go to Lynn.
Yeah, for me, it was very hard to shoot with my family. I mean, I was thinking that making a film with someone who who you can see every day in the kitchen, in the living room was easy, but no, it was not easy. And my camera was a problem. Putting my camera in the living room the first day was a very, very hard. I remember my grandmother just hit me and just to say, go out, you and your camera. I remember I just tried to make microphones in the house and take sounder for 2 years. After I came back with my camera after two years later, because it's like something hard. You put your camera in front of someone and you say, okay, tell your story. And as I am a part of this story also, I was afraid how I can have the balance telling the story of my family and then not being in front of the camera all the time, because this is very, I mean, I think this is the balance that we have to respect when we are making documentaries about ourselves and about our families. Convincing my family was very hard, especially my grandmother. Someone who don't like pictures. She find herself directly in Cannes Film Festival watching herself for the first time. She was never been in theater, so she find herself in the busy theater, sold out, watching herself. So I was like watching my grandmother, because it was very special to convince these people to just tell their stories, and just finally it's gonna be very stupid that we tell our stories and somebody else gonna be upset, because they was afraid to talk about the past, especially this sensitive.
And Lena, how was that for you?
So I had the experience in my first film in which I already filmed my grandparents. And for me, there was no convincing to do, in the sense that I knew that they would accept the camera, because my films also start with personal archival footage that my father used to film in the 90s when I was young, in both my families. So it's as if the members of my family were always kind of used to have a presence of the camera. As both my parents are actors, also it wasn't a surprise for my family that I come with a camera. You know, my aunts always say the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. So it was really, the hardest thing for me was to actually film my mother, not because she's my mother, but more because she's an actress. So she's used to being filmed in a context of a professional set. And so, first of all, I was a bit shy, you know, to like film her because she's used to work with great directors, and I didn't feel comfortable. And she didn't feel comfortable talking about her intimacy because she's used to express her emotions through other characters. So with my mother, I really had to think of ways to get her to be comfortable, because I was asking her to tell me about moments of her past that have been impactful and maybe difficult for her. So I sometimes used other ways, you know, asking her maybe to react moments of her childhood and using archival footage and only our voices, not the image, to allow her to feel more free. And with the rest of my family, I was actually impressed, because my aunts were really enjoying very much being on camera. And so it was very, I was really surprised that they would be very natural with each other and having their complicity. The hard thing was for my grandmother to tell her story of displacement since 1948. So for all these stories that were too tragic and too hard for the characters to remember, I decided to use my own voice and to write their stories and to make my mother read them. So the film was really a whole process on, you know, how to tell these stories in the most authentic ways, even though it meant passing through fictional aspects of writing, because sometimes the reality is too harsh. So to be able to transmit it, you have to use other ways so that the characters don't feel that you're putting them in places that are not comfortable. And as it's members of my family, of course, I didn't want to have neither confrontation, neither pain. The idea for me was to film their story and our story in order to give us back our memory, a memory that is silenced and not recognized, and to give back complexity to these women so that they can exist, you know, out in the world, and that their complexity and humanity is recognized. So I didn't want us to suffer through the process, even though, of course, making a film is always a lot of pain and and joy at the same time. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Lina and Asma. It ties into my question for Kautar. How did you navigate the familial relationship between the real subjects and the familial relationship between the performer and the real subject in your film? Because there's multiple kind of layers at play in those interactions. So as a filmmaker, how are you kind of navigating that?
Yeah, but before answering your question, I wanted to say how much I'm very happy to be here, and I saw all the movies, and I'm just amazed by the quality of the movies. I mean, Asma'i movie is such a beautiful, crafted movie. Lina movie moved me to tears. Michelle and Joe, their movie was such a door open to poetry. I mean, when Michelle and Joe arrived, they bring light with them. And Kokomo City was one maybe of the best movies of the year. I was just amazed by the first scene, watching it, saying, oh my God, oh my God. So I just wanted to say this to everybody. Then in my movie, so the main idea to tell this familial story, to go in this introspective journey to their past through the actor, was to give them the possibility to direct those actors, to have like a medium, you know, to revisit their past. And when I casted the actors, I didn't the purpose of the casting wasn't are they good actors, will they, the main idea was their personality, because the actor in the movie, they don't act most of the time. They are expressing their personality. They are asking questions. They are reacting as a person. That's why I emphasize it's a documentary, although there are actors in the movie. So what was wonderful in this experience, I mean, when we do documentary, we all here know this. We are the first audience of our movie. We are surprised. It's not like fiction, where we came with our ideas to execute our ideas. I mean, it's a more humble way of working. So what surprises me, the relationship between the girls. I mean, the movie is about 4 daughters. There are 2 missing daughters, played by 2 actresses, and the 2 real daughters. So when they met in the movie in the one of the first scene, and then the chemistry between them was expected. My desire as a filmmaker, composing this family on the screen, and they became there was a kind of magic sisterhood between them. So mainly I was careful in choosing the actor to have empathic people who are who listen, who understand, and this facilitated everything, because the idea was also to provide a safe space for everybody, and especially for the mother and her daughters, the real character in this place. So the choice of the actor and even of the crew, because We see what is in front of the camera, but behind the camera is very important. I try to choose a very caring, mostly feminine crew. So everybody can feel safe and feel the trust. So was mainly the process.
I think that, I mean, that brings me to the next question is, how do you build trust with your subjects, and how do you create that safe space and continue to, because as we were talking about, some of these films have taken a while, they've taken years to make. So how do you continue to keep that safe space active for the subjects while you're kind of working with them, and keep that trust moving year on year as you're working on the project?
I mean, when we do documentary, we know that we are entering people's life and will not go back. It's not like actors; they are doing their part and they move to other parts. And no, life continue. And starting from this idea, you have a kind of responsibility. When you want to tell the story of somebody, it's their story, and they are your partner. They are the owner of their story. And you explain to them everything, your intention. I was sharing with them during all those years, even my doubt, even the desire to quit this project because it was complicated. And I was even discussing with them my film technique and everything. I mean, it was, and they were like, we were in contact all the time. I became member of the family because when I met this mother in the beginning, because of the story of her daughters, she was a kind of persona non grata, even in her family, nobody wanted to talk to her. So I was like the only person not having, not being judgmental around her. So yeah, little by little with years until today, we are very, very close.
I think for us, there are a couple of things to signal that I think we were, again, trying to push. We spent 13 years with a camera on ourselves as our family. So being in front of the camera informed how we would engage, certainly with someone like Nikki Giovanni. But at the same time, the question with this is, how do you avoid hagiography, right? How do you honor without it being flat, right? And how much does this person sort of allow you to come in? Because to be honest, the observational documentary form or documentary form is inherently extractive. There's an inherent power relationship that exists that we try to challenge in the process. And some of our process is actually in the film. When Nikki says, I'm not going there, I'm sorry, I'm not going there because it's too painful. And we asked a question that is sort of typical, right, of the nonfiction sort of approach. And for us, it was really a light in terms of challenging us creatively, right, to keep a relationship that was intimate. I mean, we spent 7 years with her and she was open on so many levels, but there are certain things she was categoric about. So we flipped that. We used that unapologetic aspect of her to be an indicator of who she was, adding to her complexity, but also challenging us as the viewer and as the filmmaker to, what if she had responded to this and said yes and cried in front of us? What would we have gained, right? What we gain is more complexity by honoring her limits in the process. So, and to this day, I mean, she's calling us almost every day, to thank us for the film, but also, to comfort us also in the process. So as Joe mentioned earlier, these are relationships that we invest in that are part of healing that essentially almost, really last a lifetime.
Yeah. Joe, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to make a point, and the mute allowed me a little more time to think about it. But and it goes back to what we talked about early, healing. But one of the things that we do when we work with characters is see them. And whatever that means, they feel that we know them, they know us. And so the thing that's really weighing on me is looking at you all and thinking these films would not have been made 20 years ago. And so the healing that we talked about earlier, there's healing going into seeing these films, seeing different cultures, seeing seeing the complexity of the world that we live in. When I was a kid, I saw a Black person on television. The whole household would come and stare and sit in front of the television. That tells you how old I am, but that's not so far ago. The fact that half of these films are foreign, whatever that means. I know my film is foreign to you as well. But those are amazing changes, accomplishments that allow us to look at each other and look at ourselves differently. And I want to elevate that. That's a healing, because when my culture was not represented on the TV, and yours weren't either, whoever you are, it took something from me. It took something from my agency to demand respect and equality. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm so impressed with the range of these films that I have to say that. What?
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, Dee, I was going to just come to you to kind of build on something Joe was saying about just the healing that comes from making the work, and but also in your case, how did you work with your subjects and that level of trust? Because there's also something about tone in your film that makes it accessible for someone who's not familiar with the community to ingrain themselves, to get into the space. And how did you kind of work with your subjects to work on that?
Well, I think it was, even before I met any of the girls, I didn't know any of them before the film, but I knew for sure that I needed to check my ego before I pick up the camera and understand, whether they know it or not, that I'm aware that they're broken people. They are broken. They're traumatized and they're dealing with abandonment issues, a stress that is hard to explain to anyone else. Not that our stress is greater than anybody else's, but it's just hard to explain. So, but I also feel that if I was interviewing a KKK family, that my respect for their beliefs, because at the end of the day, it's not their fault that they believe that way or raised that way, I would handle their stories the same. And I would understand that I'm going into their world and they're allowing me into this space, but I'm also not greater than them because I'm pointing the camera at them. So that could be very antagonizing and kind of like intimidating to hold a camera to someone, because sometimes people are defensive and they're shy or embarrassed, and the camera just, it triggers people. So it was very important for me to let them know, not so much of my personal life, but just the proof. I don't have a budget. I don't have a crew. I don't have a lighting person. There will never, ever be makeup on set, So me coming to them, bringing a bagel or a sandwich when I meet them, that's the best that I could do. I think that really opened them up to how desperate, in the sense of me wanting to work, was to them, but also most importantly, me challenging them as well, like wanting to do something different with our stories. And they were very excited about that.
Thank you. I mean, I want to build on a topic that Kauthar mentioned, as well as what you're talking about, Dee, is all of your films, in my opinion, have very powerful, headstrong women at the center of them, but they're also broken in some ways based on their relationships with each other or by themselves as a person. Mm-hmm. So as filmmakers who are inherently in the position of power, because you're the one with the camera, mm-hmm. how did each of you kind of navigate that with these powerful, again, I'm using the word pretty broadly, powerful subjects, as you are also the person holding the power?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was very special because the Olfa, the mother in my movie, is a very bigger than life character. Mm-hmm. So I found the solution, because since I'm doing fiction and documentary, when I'm writing fiction and I have a character becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, the technique I find to solve this issue is to split this character in two and to make it two characters, so I can create conflict. And I was thinking a lot about the mother, and I was afraid that she will, because we are in position of power, this is true, but we are also fascinated by our character, and we can easily be like filming them and loving them and thinking they are wonderful. And I was afraid that she will eat the movie in a way. So I told myself I'll use my fictional techniques since I have actresses. And I brought an actress to the mother to hold her mirror so we can see her in all her complexity. So yeah, it's true that we hold the power because we are the storyteller. I mean, we put on form the things, but they are also the storyteller. So it's a kind of powerful, powerless relationship, a weird one, but fascinating one.
Mm-hmm. It's a dance for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it also helped really quickly. It also helped me to literally what I did when I met them, at least the first couple minutes of each session when I met each person, male and female, I literally would film them and I would turn the monitor of the camera to them and say, see, this is the idea. See that, and they'd go, oh, like literally before I showed them that, they were interested, but they were so skeptical. First of all, it's like we're talking about transgender anything. Normally that you know, narrative is always so hard to kind of navigate around or enjoy. So I was bringing them something new, like we're gonna say, forget all of that, and we're gonna just have fun and just go there. And they were like, what? And I was like, okay, just stand there and say this and da-da-da, and I'll show you. And I showed them and they go, wow. And so that really helped me earn their trust. Never doing a film before, didn't have a resume or anything to prove that I could do this. I really had to just sell and tap dance and sing, do whatever needed to happen for them to trust me was the most important thing.
Anyone else kind of want to add on that before I jump onto Joe, I think you're on mute.
I think I will just add something that the time is great revelator also to gain this trust with the people who are shooting with. Yeah, just like giving the time to the story and just coming back years and years and taking some parts from here and there, and even give the opportunity to actors, even if we are talking about the real stories, we can change the way how we tell the stories, but we try to keep the facts. And that's what I tried to make. For example, in The Mother of All Lies, it was very difficult to make this intimate story with a national and political background. So how I can mix both? These two lines was like very different. So I think also this positive filmic device that we can create to bring this story and to tell this story in different way. But we can also just take really the responsibility of telling the things in an organic way, but just change the way. The way is very important. Like, for example, in For Daughter, I like very well how we can bring actors, like, yeah, because we have this freedom and this space to try things as we are when we are sure that the story is real and the facts are real. We will not change the facts, we will change the way how to tell the fact. And this is what I like, what I like in the new form of documentary. Yeah, so that was the thing that was like this. The trust is like, with time we win the trust of our characters. With time we give to the story and to them to speak. Yeah.
So I would say, to echo that, Nikki has a very big personality. And I remember the first day I shot, she told me she wasn't going to answer the question. And I'd never encountered that in that way before. And what I decided to do is listen. And that really transformed our documentary, because she said a lot of things that we didn't agree with. She said a lot of things that were controversial in many ways. And what we realized is, by listening to her, not only did we gain her trust, but we began to incorporate some of her philosophy into our film. She doesn't believe in broken women. She believes that women have survived some circumstances that are difficult, and that they have learned from those experiences, and we should understand what they are, and we could use them ourselves. So we see, instead of someone who was struggling with survival, but someone who's developed survival skills. And those skills are to be copied, to be used. And so that's what we try to uplift in the story. And if I had shut her down or closed off to that point of view, we would have lost the film.
I want to add on that is the fact that, so when Nikki refused to answer your question, it is an obstacle, right? It became an obstacle, but you took that obstacle and it helped you inform your craft and the way you were going to approach the film. Is that a good representation of what I'm hearing?
Yes, we took that obstacle and found other ways to tell the story. But I'm also saying that when I see her, I don't see her as someone who's struggling with the abuse that she suffered from her father. I also see the opposite, which is, this is a woman who's overcome an incredibly abusive relationship with her father. And in order to do that, she had to develop skill sets, ways of communicating with people. If you listen to her poetry, it's always about what we've overcome. It's very positive. And so that is the message in the film. That's what people leave with. And by listening to her and acknowledging that, whenever we do a film for the rest of our lives, we won't see the trauma first. We'll see the resilience. And so she's taught me.
What that does also, I mean, yes, that, first of all, every participant in every film presents obstacles.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're upfront, like what Nikki did, and sometimes it's passive aggressive, like not returning the phone calls or not showing up to agreed upon time for a shoot. I've experienced all of that. So I appreciate the bluntness of how far I can go, because as you said, what it does then, it opens the doors for creativity, right? It opens the door for us to see, well, what is in her poetry that we can work with that makes it even more vulnerable than if we heard it, you know, just through her voice, because it is through that art form that we discover her, you know. So it's really about it, and that's what, you know, filmmaking is really. It's all about the obstacles and what is the creativity that comes out of that, whether you don't have light, right, or you're using a bagel to bring people in. But how do you flip that? And I think the bigger thing that I hope sort of the film helps also is us to see things differently too, because what Nikki opened the door for us is, you know, with her story about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that I could not have imagined seeing things so differently, that if something is presented in front of me, I am not going to take it at its value face up. How can I twist it on its head and discover something beautiful or new or different?
Wonderfully put, Michelle. I mean, that kind of brings me to the same question to our other filmmakers is, how did you convert an obstacle into an opportunity on your film? Because I'm sure all of you face some kind of obstacle, and how did that unlock the creativity in your work and inform your movie in a new direction in some ways?
There is something that I like about obstacles, because when I don't have obstacles, I put some to myself. I'm not like, it's not obstacles, but constraint. Because if I don't have constraint, I can't, I'm too distracted. If everything is possible, so I'll be lost like on the way. So as Michelle said, and this is so right, when you have obstacles, you maybe be angry and just close your eyes and change the perspective, and it will be an opportunity. Just look at it from another side. And as I said, when I don't have obstacles, there are constraints. Like in my movie, I decided to shoot in one place. It's a constraint, but it's a great constraint because it gives me a visual unity for the movie. It makes the work, the crew smaller, and everything more intimate. So when I don't have obstacles, I create them.
I think it's also what Asma was saying earlier about time. You know, it's also understanding that you cannot influence reality. You have to give time for things to arrive and come up naturally. And so I remember that in my first film, my grandfather was really, really silent, and I constructed him as a character of silence. While accepting that, I still kept on trying to make him speak until he spoke after like months and months and months. But so I think you have to allow yourself to not have one clear objective, but you have to try many things at the same time, and then accept that reality will give you what you're looking for, but maybe not in the way that you thought it would come. And for me, what is very like what helps me a lot overcome obstacles is also my artistic collaborators, and especially my editor that I'm always in touch with, and that is also collaborating with me to the writing, because sometimes you are so much into the reality that you get stressed anytime something doesn't happen the way you had planned, or you know, you feel like the scene that you're filming is not going to be interesting, or that you're totally you know, not telling a story that you think will interest anyone. You start freaking out, and then you come back with images, and this person sees something that you sometimes forget to see because you're so much into the story. So this distance brings a lot of things. So that's why I always love to shoot and to edit at the same time, and not do it like, I think documentary is a form that in which you keep on writing at all stages. And so I would write a bit and then shoot and then go back to editing, and in the editing write again and go shoot again, because there's some things for which I need distance and I need someone else to see things that I forget to see or that I block. And it's crazy how sometimes some scenes that I was shooting, I was thinking, okay, this is, for example, this is way too intimate. I will never use that, or I don't feel comfortable. And then I would watch them in the editing room and say, no, but this you can put aside. And then they became the most important scenes that today I really love and that I really feel comfortable with. But it's just your own process also as a director, like of having the right distance with the characters also, while being concerned in the moment of being protective and not hurting. And so it's always finding your balance, and it's that's why it's always useful to be in dialogue with other collaborators, because a film, even though it's documentary, even though it's a small team, it's also always a collaborative work. Because as you said, Dee, also it's a question of ego, and we have to be, you know, careful about that, because sometimes you have emotions and other things that come into that. So it's always very important to be in dialogue with other people that help you construct it.
That's a great segue for my next question is, how did each of you find your producing teams? And did you work with existing collaborators, or did your producing teams kind of help you, again, navigate certain things as you were kind of honing in on your films itself?
Let me answer that first. I found my producing team dancing on top of a bar. And then we had 2 kids, and we married.
That's so funny.
Yes, no, I work with Michelle. But so I'm not sure we're the ones to answer this question. We've been reconsidering working with other folks we have. It's less conflictual, but the results I don't think are as good. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that. Except I do want to add on what Lena said. I mean, the producing team, yeah, it is important between the two of us. We worked with producers along the way. It's 7 years, so some people came and went. But the biggest collaborative process has been really with our editors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been, and I hope to work with all of them again. In fact, we've already been working with them again, because there's a level of creativity and I think that it really teaches you, like you were saying, Dee, to put your ego to the side and it being all about the work. And there's this communication that is so important that really allows you to get to the next level in terms of what you want to accomplish with the work. So I would really center the collaboration with our editors.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my another great segue. So Dee, I read somewhere that you edited your film on iMovie, and you also wore a lot of different hats on your film: composer, producer, director, a guest camera, and also editor. And so, can you tell me or us, was there during the process at any point were those hats at odds with each other, and how did you kind of overcome that left brain, right brain kind of thing?
Yeah, I fight with myself all the time. But that is a part of being a creator. Like, you second guess yourself, you push yourself, you make yourself angry because why didn't I do this earlier, or what the hell am I doing? So, I mean, I don't know how to really describe how I got in that situation, other than just the lack of time, because having to run behind people and explain to them this great idea, it was wasting so much time, or the lack of resources. I didn't have any money. The only way I got the camera was asking someone to buy it for me. And you know, he didn't have to do it, and he did it. He believed in it. He saw some photos that I shot around the city, And yeah, it went from there. But my situation as far as producer, once I was fairly done with the film, or what I thought was good enough to present to people outside of myself and my cousins, I met Harris Duran through someone, and Harris had saw it, and he had some experience with Sundance and other stuff in the past. And so he saw the film and he hit me back and could not, he was really just couldn't, nothing he said made sense. He really, he was so shocked, and he was so gracious with my work, what I had presented. And he said, hey, he wants to come on board as a producer. And when he came on board, it literally, to me, changed the trajectory of the possibilities of Kokomo City. Like I pretty much kind of set the tone and the limits, which were none, and just what the craziness and what I wanted to do. And he just came in and really helped me to just refine some things, and also to remind me, you could go take this even further. So having me doing it by myself was liberating. I'm glad I did it by myself, because I had no one saying, ooh, transgender, ooh, LGBT, ooh, they're gonna say this, I didn't have that. I just had freedom, like, you know.
Yeah.
But when Harris came in to kind of like wrap this up, I learned so much from him. Obviously, this is what you should do, is teach as a producer. And me not knowing anything, I really learned a great deal from him. So, and then Bill Butler came in and just really just like set the hammer to the floor. It was great. It was great. But them being kind of like in my vision and on my side, and me knowing now I am not by myself. Now people believe, and now people are believing and also helping. That just boosted me up to really amp up the creativity. So yeah, it was a great natural experience. It was natural how they came in.
I think like collaborators, Michelle, as you were saying, not just producers, editors, sound person, anyone basically that you're working at are so important, because film or media making in the broad sense is such a collaborative art form. So how do you guys cast your collaborators? Because casting behind the scene is as much as casting in front of the scene. So how do you approach that?
Can I just talk about this? For me, for example, I mean, the documentary, sometimes we don't need a lot of people to make documentaries. It depends to the story. It depends to the way we will tell the story. But the relationship also with the DOP. Sometimes we are DOP in our films. For example, for me, I create my own archive with my small camera during the 7 first years, and then I meet my DOP. And then we talked a lot before making this journey together. So for me, sometimes in documentary, you just like look for this feeling with these people you meet before, or you for example, the editing room, for example, it's very important. The films, most of the documentaries are written in the editing room. For my case, I have a lot of obstacles to shoot this film. So I couldn't have the permit to shoot in the cemetery, to shoot in a lot of locations was forbidden to go there for a lot of reasons. So obstacles was very good for me, because they made this film. I created everything. I created even the set and bring it to my characters, and not looking for closed doors. And that set, was very, very, very good to have this link between the intimate and the national story. And then my team, for example, we are 3 or 4. I start with 1 picture. I finish with 500 hours of rushes. Who gonna edit that? There is no editor who gonna accept to watch 500 hours of rushes during 10 years. So that's why sometimes we find ourselves forced to do a lot of tasks in the film: editor, writer, director, producer. And sometimes we have no timeline. We cannot hire someone with you in documentary for the whole process. Sometimes we change because of the because these people cannot be every time with us. They have other projects to do. In 10 years, you cannot work with the same team. Sometimes, for example, for me, I edit by myself, but I have a lot of people to watch with me and to say what I can cut, what I can, keep in the film. And that's why it's very difficult to talk about one team, except if we are creating a process. For example, in the last part of my shooting, I have one team, but in 10 years, I have a lot of people that collaborate and helped in the project.
Okay. I mean, it is, especially with nonfiction work, you're working so many years and collaborators will kind of come and go. And some of them will stay with you, some of them will become life partners as things go on. So it's really fascinating for me, both how we continue to kind of build on each other's art, how do we continue to kind of glean from each other as we are kind of continued as we work on our own form and our own craft. I have a question here from. Sorry.
That begs another question. You know, the economics of filmmaking are such that you're almost forced to do some of the work. I mean, how do you pay someone for 2 years or 5 years? And so I would call it a la carte filmmaking, where we do not edit, and we try, but it doesn't give us the results. So what we tend to do is work with lots of editors, and we find that process important, but that's a la carte. Same with producers. We had an amazing producer, but he came on in the last year and raised enough money to finish the project, and would fend off the folks who wanted us to change lines, to change scenes. He was a protector. I was Tommy Oliver for Confluential Films. And so I think all of us are probably pretty good at figuring out who we need and who we can afford to pay at a certain period of the film. Maybe Dee's more experienced than the rest of us, but since you apparently made something for very little, I'm way beyond that. And that's a hats off to the ingenuity of documentary filmmakers.
Absolutely. I have a question from an audience here. When do you know without a shadow of a doubt that your film is finished?
It's a very difficult question. It depends. I mean, I did a movie years ago following, the title is Zainab Hates the Snow, following a young girl from the age of 9 till the age of 15. So to see all her coming of age experience, moving from Tunisia to Canada. So it's also an immigration story. And I was like, I never finished this project because her life goes on and she's changing all the time. And I didn't knew how to finish the project because, as I said, I was fascinated by the character, by her evolution, until the day the people who gave me some money to do this movie are telling me, where is the movie, you know? So learning from this experience, I mean, I figured out how to finish the movie. I filmed already 6 years. We see her changing in the camera. And I told myself the best way to finish this movie is to show her the movie, you know, and it was the last scene of the movie. So she can see herself from 9 to 16. So, yeah. But for 4 daughters, for example, since I have a little bit more experience and I faced all those issues before, I was sure about the ending frame. I was sure that I'll end this movie this way because for me, I knew it's a story about generational trauma transmission. So it was, and sometimes you have a lot of ideas, as Lina said, you know, you have an impression in the shooting, and then you arrive to the editing room, and it's another story because you are not in the same mood, you are not in the same stress. So sometimes things changes, but for daughters, it stayed, and I kept this final shot idea till the end, and it's now in the movie. So it depends.
I think there's someone who said a filmmaker never finishes a film, they abandon it.
Mhm.
And so I'm still watching the film and thinking about things that I could have had in there or things that I dropped. So
Yeah.
really about being at peace, you know, with your story at the moment, you know. So yeah, I don't know, for me it's this relationship every time I watch it. Knowing what I've left on the what they call the cutting room floor, which is probably an old saying now.
Yeah. Another question from an audience: have you ever had to replace a subject midway through production? And to kind of rephrase that, did you start filming with a subject, and then along the way you met someone else through the subject who ended up becoming a major character in your film?
Yes, me. It was very it was obvious that this person needed to be replaced. This person is a male. He's famous, and you would know his name, but he was in the film, and he wasn't being, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way, but he wasn't being honest. I mean, the girls were spilling their guts. They were,
Yeah.
and guys were stepping forward, and it's just so much respect, so much incredible energy that was being recycled and reciprocated. Yeah, at one point, like everyone was just so excited and relieved, and I hate the word brave, but they were so, you know, badass and grown about who they are and what they want to say. And here's this celebrity who, you know, I was so angry. And I've completely, obviously, lost so much respect. You can't force anyone to say what you want them to say, but it was so obvious that this person was holding back. And just compared to the other cast, I got offended, and I came across Lo. Well, I knew Lo, but Lo had randomly told me this story about him loving this trans woman for a year that he had never met. And it was just a sign and a door from God to say, get rid of this guy, and here's Lo, who deserves it. And that's how that happened. But it was very, very stressful.
I think it depends to the story, because sometimes we cannot change some subjects, some characters, because the story is telling by them. So we have just to wait for them to be patient and just to take distance and to come back. And sometimes, yeah, okay, we can change it. It's like yeah, it's depends to the story for me. For me, for example, I have a project that I started in 2018. That I cannot finish. The character passed away. It's really hard for me, but even if before they passed, she passed away, I cannot finish this film, and I cannot change her. So yeah, sometimes it depends on the story.
Yeah, I mean, as Asma said, like we in my case, for example, I'm doing movies, character-driven movies. So it's not like I have a lot of character where I can change, replace them. I mean, I can have secondary character, like in my movie, the male character, I filmed them, the real. But I didn't keep them in the editing, so it wasn't that important, and it was for the good of the movie. But when you have a character-driven movie, I think that it's like in fiction. You do casting, you think a lot about the person you want to film, because we meet a lot of people, and when you bring a camera, things change. So in general, if you are thinking about story, try to bring a small camera from the beginning to test this thing, because there are people in normal life, they are like born for camera. I mean, for me, Olfa and her daughters, they are born for camera. They are born storyteller. So you have a lot of people like this in reality. And there are people, you can find them very sophisticated, very beautiful, photogenic. And when you bring a camera, everything falls apart because they are not the right person. They are not comfortable with the camera. I mean, people are different. So before starting and fantasizing about a movie, what I did in 2016, I mean, I saw Ulfa in TV also. I understood that she's very comfortable with camera. But I wanted to check the daughters, and the daughters were like the mother. So for me, they are wonderful character. They will not one day tell me, no, I can't do it. I'm ashamed, or I'm not comfortable with the camera. So this is part of the process to say, I go for this project or no.
So I've been shooting for what, 2 years? Character-driven piece. My lead character is now in prison, and I'm not sure when I'm going to see him again. And this reminds me, I need to call him and thank him because I'm going to make this film, and I'm going to use the obstacle of him being in prison to make a better film. But I can recall Michelle changing characters on a film that she was shooting for a longer period of time in the Dominican Republic. The character couldn't hold the film. But what she did is made 2 films. And the character who couldn't hold the film made a beautiful short film. And so she took that obstacle, changed the character, and put her in the right format, which was a short form.
I mean, it's funny how that happens, right? Like you discover something new as you're kind of working on your project, and maybe the new form is more successful or more attuned to the story that you're trying to tell. Follow-up question to that is, when you work with subjects for years, do you experience any diva moments, and how do you navigate them? Not necessarily about this particular film that we are talking about, in general.
Listen, dealing with 4 trans Black women, you're gonna come across a diva or 2 or 3 or 4. Yeah, listen. One thing I learned about doing this documentary is that you'll be surprised how much people want to tell their story. Once you present the idea of them, they feel entitled to that like, this is my moment. And it is their moment. And again, it's that ego thing. You have to check at the door. You have to check yourself before you check them, because even with the diva-ness, you could still capture something. You can still capture the truth. And there were some intense moments where I had to work around people's schedule and their word and things like that. So, the energy was a little different than the last time I saw them, but, I would change the music, or everything we're saying, basically, there's always a way to get what you need. It may not come in the form that you thought, but even the diva stuff, I expected, but it was nowhere near what I thought. It was not like that. They were very level-headed, but everyone has their moments. Yeah.
For me, when I'm dealing with actors in fiction, it annoys me a lot, the diva attitude, you know, I can't stand it. But in documentary, it's the other way around. I want them to be diva because they are the one telling their story. They are the one in the center to give them confidence, to spoil them. I mean, with the production, we talk about this a lot. For me, it's very important. They can feel diva also, even if they don't feel this way. So it's very, very different.
I think part of this thing goes back to the idea of the extractive nature of documentary film, because it's really, I often say it's more important the time I spend without the camera than with the camera. That it's this relationship building that allows for trust where the vulnerability can come out, right? And so it's really about chipping away at the extractive aspect of it, being aware, as you were saying, Dee, in terms of the it's your ego at the door, but it's also, what are we both getting out of this? Understanding there is a transactional nature to this, right? And so what am I leaving behind, and what am I contributing to the relationship that is more than just the film, right? That is more than just the promise of this thing that may or may not happen depending on funding. That at least then there's some kind of honesty in our relationship too, that I think is really key to just the nature of nonfiction, you know.
Yeah, well, I think our time is up. I could keep going for a while, but I really want to thank Michelle, Joe, Lena, Dee, Kauthar, and Asma. Thank you so much for your insights and for your time. Those of you who are watching this live, just make sure you check out all the films and cast your vote for the Spirit Awards. And those of you who are going to watch it later, be sure to check out Bye Bye Tiberius, Going to Mars, Four Daughters, Kokomo City, and The Mother of All Lies. And very much appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I look forward to meeting all of you soon.
Yes.
Soon.
And good luck
In
to
real
you.
life.
Good luck to you on the Oscars.
Thank you. Thank
Kokomo
you.
City, Kokomo City streaming on Showtime February 2nd.
Great.
Oh, great.
Awesome.
Guys,
And we'll be in Paris at this August. Shooting. We may need some help from you guys.
Yeah, you have three
welcome,
people,
Joe.
so you can
Welcome.
for sure.
Bye.
Bye.
Fun in Paris.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.